most, but when you look at your van, like, this is God's van that God has given me, right? Or my skill saw, like, this is God's skill saw that he let me buy, and I've been using, like, we don't think that way.
And I was raised to think that.
Yes, and that's what I mean, like, your
Yeah.
family's more intentional.
Right.
I mean, we would say it on the farm at different times, reminding ourselves, like, this is God's tractor, especially when it was really frustrating and costing thousands of dollars. Lord, it's your tractor, we're gonna lay hands on it, but you know what I mean, like the principle was there, but for the most part, we don't think that way. Whereas the early church did, right? And the Jews, when they're walking in obedience, like, everything is God's. Like they had to bring their firstborn to the temple, like the firstborn child, male. All right, God, you opened my womb, we're giving it back.
I guess in some way, growing up in a parsonage, we were always very aware that our
Okay.
house was
It's easier
not,
when it's a
yeah,
parsonage.
Yeah, because it was like, this is the house God gave us to live in. This is what my parents always told us, like.
The glass house.
So we were always like, oh, okay,
Everybody
so
looks
this
in.
is not ours,
So,
Yeah.
so to start out like that, and then maybe this is the quest I'm on, like, why does God give this? What is the origin of the thought? Like giving, well, it's God's money. So when I'm handling God's money, I need to judge where God's money is going to go. If your life isn't right with God, well, maybe we shouldn't, right? If it
I mean,
is,
there's been instances in my life where people have asked for money, and I've said, well, what are you gonna use it for? Well, I need food. Okay, then I'll take you to the store and I'll buy the food for you, as
Yeah.
opposed to just handing it to them because you could tell they were gonna
Yeah.
use it on drugs or something, that's all.
but Jacob and I were talking about this morning. The entire financial structure for Israel was stewarding God's money and helping the covenant community.
Yeah.
Like the entire, like as I started out in the business endeavor, it was to help Lawrence, right? To lend to you so that you can better your family, right? Even I'm not gonna charge you interest, but I wanna see you succeed because you are a child of God. You're part of this special nation. And then your responsibility is to help Ruth, right? Like the whole financial structure is to help and cultivate this community. I said, Jacob, it's such a foreign thing.
I think you see that with the Amish and the Mennonite.
Yeah,
They're definitely on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Of course,
yeah.
they have other things that are, but no, they know they need to help their community, their
Nobody has to
people.
pay to have a barn put up
To-
because
No.
they come and do it for them.
Yeah, they're there, they bring the food,
oh, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Some
And-
pagan
and-
religions
And I'm gonna
do
say
that
the
better than we
rural
do.
communities
Like
used
Muslims
to
do
be
that
like
better than we
that,
do.
a little bit, right? But,
Probably wouldn't be any homeless in the Amish community.
yeah.
Yeah.
Senior
They'd
care,
also have
nursing
to
homes
work.
in the Amish community?
Yeah.
No, I mean, so as much as we're like, oh, look at them, in our culture, they seem to have, I would say even to a point, a better life.
Yeah, even other
It's a bit-
countries, you would never hear, if like Katrina couldn't tell people what I did for a living in India.
Yeah, yeah,
You didn't say that.
yeah, yeah.
You know, so,
That you took care of elderly?
that you worked in a nursing home. That's just a foreign thing in
Yeah.
India, and
The principles.
you
is-
wouldn't say
Because the
that.
family takes care of it.
That's right,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be looked down on.
So
Seriously. look.
even just the topic of giving and the topic of judging, the topic of lending and the topic of even covenant community, it's a foreign thing to the church today, right? So I mean, how do we, I don't know, how do you get back? How do you start working through these principles? How do you, like how do you even start? That was one of JR's questions, like if this is the gospel, or these are some of the things that are missing from my understanding, how do we, in a simple way, start taking steps towards this, right? And, I mean, I don't really have an answer to that. I think we've been doing a good job, but then, okay, topic of giving. I'm sorry. I mean, you're not really part of this faith community, so we can't help you. That isn't because of our financial, as a church, I'm just saying, like, biblically,
Yeah.
How's your spiritual walk? Like, do you wanna come grow with us, or how are you serving Christ? I just need help now. Well, I need help now too,
Yeah.
right? But this is God's money, we have to be careful with it. I'm pretty sure I make some enemies with that too, but.
Well, people like down south, in the churches that I was in down south, they would, if somebody came to the church asking for money, they would say, you go ahead and come in and sit down and you go through the service, and then after the service, we'll sit down and we'll talk to you. And if somebody was willing to stay in the service, then they would have the conversation afterwards. But if they'd be like, no, I ain't staying in here, then they'd walk out the door, and that was, they made their choice.
Yeah.
And even like when we were in missions in Ethiopia, you'd go in and they did the medical missions with the idea of, like, they would preach, or even in Cameroon when I was there, they would preach a simple gospel message before they started treating all the patients. So we're giving because Christ has given us, you know, the opportunity to tell them about the Lord, but.
Yeah, and there is a difference between missions and covenant community too, right? And that's kinda, I think, what they do in Dominican and Taono and evangelism, I mean, that's really, really, really good, or Cameroon and the medical hospitals. But Jesus is speaking to a covenant community
Yeah.
who all have the scriptures, right? Know who God is, know, like, if there's wrong, or if there's sinner's credit, I mean, it's, we all know better, so now how do we face this topic? And, I think that would be a good one, so why don't we leave it there? This would be me too, as we're working through these texts. I've read quite a bit. Ron Blue writes a lot on finances and stuff, and he takes some of these principles and develops them.
It's interesting because I was reading just before I came tonight about the situation in Moncton with the
Yes.
Harvest House,
Okay.
and how they're not, the government's not giving them the handouts anymore. And they're forking out something like $38,000 a month to try to meet the needs of all the people in Moncton right now that are homeless.
Okay.
And so the government's basically saying, no, we're not giving you any more money. And I was driving on the way out here tonight thinking.
Is that part of the new cutbacks, like provincially,
Supposedly, yeah.
like you got your libraries and you got?
Right.
Okay.
But the thought I had driving out here was there's quite a few churches in Moncton, like big churches, like the one that I went to for the conference last weekend. What are they doing to meet this need?
Yeah.
Like, that was my first thought. That's what the church is supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got several huge churches there, they can afford to break up some of this cost and.
Yeah. Well, and maybe, I mean, there is something to, I mean, you have vision, right? And I mean, as God moves, I think sometimes I'm not saying that this is the case, but sometimes programs and ministries kind of combine, and they can just become programs,
Right.
right? And to ask a
And you do have to be
church,
careful with that, yeah.
oh, yeah, but I mean, the idea of a church getting behind something when the Spirit isn't leading in it, you know, just because it's a need, they're like, okay, we'll get behind it. I think you can sometimes run into problems there too. I think maybe, if I'm not quite making sense, it'd be like this VBS thing, right, that we're
Right,
doing.
right.
You know, if somebody's not interested in it, right, or the church isn't interested, the pastor's not interested,
We don't want you.
well, the Spirit's not leading.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
And so, I mean, yeah, I mean, the ultimate answer would be, you got a heartbeat and you're breathing. I mean, we could use you. At the same time, you're not excited about it.
Yeah.
And this is just a thing of route, you know, like it doesn't mean anything to you. Maybe it would be better if we didn't have you. Maybe at that point, you know, if nobody, I'm not being negative
There's
here.
literally jobs at VBS that you don't have to do anything except be there with eyeballs.
Yeah, so let's stay positive.
I know, I'm just saying,
Right?
like,
I mean,
it's
we've
not
got a
like,
whack of kids that are signed up. I mean, I don't know what, I think we're already, you know,
Past
35, I
Something
think
like
there's
that.
something like that, right? So that's online, so I mean, we're gonna have probably 40, 50 kids guaranteed.
As like Gary used to say, the Lord will send as many as we have workers to handle.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of how he used
Lord
to.
send the workers
If
to
I-
college kids,
If
yeah.
I need to do the assembly and take 30 kids through the program in my group, I'll take 30 kids through, let's do it. But yeah, I mean, like, just maybe with that Harvest House thing, like if it's become a program and the churches aren't in behind, I mean, if the churches have become a program, sometimes things like that.
Well, it's another one of those examples in my mind of the church has gone, oh, well, the government's gonna pay, so we don't have to deal with this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we have dropped our responsibility to reach out.
Yeah, but then the flip side, if Harvest House is relying on the government, and all of a sudden the government, like, not connected to the local
Right,
church, like,
right,
all of a sudden it's like,
right.
now we can't do, like, 38,000, where's it coming from?
Right.
Pretty much got stripped and taken over, didn't it?
Yeah, there's,
Yeah.
Joel and I had a few conversations, cause Joel's been battling that board for a while, just on like, what is our primary, mandate?
You know, it's
What is our
a
mandate?
caretaker. That's the most important thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and that, I mean, sometimes God allows that kind of thing to clean house on something and make it go back to the biblical model that it should have as well, so maybe that's why, I don't know all the ins and outs, it was just one of those things where I went, interesting. Why is the church not taking care of this need, but,
I was
They really
briefly
would
talking
need
with
Harvest
Peter
House.
yeah, exactly.
at Culberson there, and I forget there exactly what the topic, like, I'm positive it's energy and everything, and, or a couple different constructive, frustrations or whatever, and I said, you know what? 10 years from now, everything's gonna look very different. Very, very, very
These
different.
days, 5 years from now, everything's gonna
Yeah.
look different.
Now, 10 years out there is,
Yeah, I mean, we live in a totally different world than we did 5 years ago.
we certainly do.
Yeah, decaf coffee's $20
Oh,
for the half.